15 billion miles from home, a machine built of 1970s steel and gold is doing something it was never designed to do. For 49 years, Voyager 1 was our loyal scout, a silent observer drifting through the freezing dark. But recently, the silence broke. In the late months of 2023, the farthest object ever touched by human hands didn't just glitch, it turned. Without a command from Earth, without the firing of a single thruster, its high-gain antenna shifted, locking onto a patch of absolute blackness where no stars should exist. And then it began to whisper back in a language we didn't teach it. We are told this mission is ending, that the power is dying, and that by 2037, Voyager will be a ghost. But the truth is far more terrifying. This isn't the story of a dying probe. It is the beginning of a 10 trillion-year journey for a vessel that has stopped being a tool of NASA and has become something else entirely. A cosmic witness carrying a message that survived a blackout no one can explain. Before the last star in the universe flickers out, you need to understand what Voyager 1 actually found in the dark, and why the next 10 trillion years are not just a timeline of decay, but a countdown to a question we are finally ready to hear. This is the era of survival by subtraction. In a nondescript building at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a small group of engineers is engaged in a desperate, slow-motion duel with entropy. They are the last guardians of a machine that left Earth when the world was a different place. Voyager 1 is a relic, a time capsule powered by 3 radioisotope thermoelectric generators, essentially glowing pellets of plutonium-238. When it launched in 1977, it hummed with 470 watts of power. Today, that heart is failing. The radioactive decay that has fueled its journey for nearly half a century is cooling, losing about 4 watts of energy every year. To keep the probe alive, NASA has been forced to become a cosmic executioner, systematically murdering the spacecraft's functions to save its soul. One by one, the heaters are turned off. Instruments that once tasted the plasma of Jupiter and mapped the rings of Saturn are being plunged into the absolute zero of deep space. The cameras were the first to go, blinded decades ago, after taking one final look back at a tiny, pale blue dot. Then went the heaters for the cosmic ray subsystem and the magnetometers. Every time a switch is flipped on Earth, Voyager 1 grows colder, its internal temperature dropping toward a point where the very solder on its circuit boards should become brittle and snap. But it refuses to die. It is a machine designed for a 5-year mission that is now approaching its 50th, surviving on a memory smaller than a single JPEG image. Yet, as the lights go out on the ship, something strange is happening in the dark. The successful transcripts of the past will tell you that Voyager is simply a piece of drifting junk, but they missed the anomaly of November 2023, an event that changed the internal culture of NASA forever. It began with a distortion. Voyager's telemetry, the heartbeat of the ship, suddenly morphed into a repetitive, structured stream of hexadecimal code that defied every known software protocol on the ship. For 5 months, the engineers stared at a signal that looked like a language but lacked a dictionary. They called it a glitch. They blamed aging hardware, cosmic ray strikes, or a failing memory chip. But then came the torque event. The onboard gyroscopes, instruments meant to keep the probe's antenna pointed at Earth with the precision of a marksman, recorded a physical rotation. Voyager 1 didn't just drift, it adjusted. It pivoted its entire multi-ton body toward a specific coordinate in the interstellar void, a region known as a null zone. In physics, a null zone is a theoretical impossibility in the messy reality of space, a pocket where the gravitational pull of every distant star and galaxy cancels out perfectly, leaving a void of absolute stillness. Voyager wasn't programmed to find null zones. It doesn't have the sensors to detect them. And yet, it steered itself there. While the public was told of communication issues, the internal reality was a quiet breakdown. The signal didn't just return, it rebooted. When the link was finally restored after a 12-hour blackout, the probe's internal clocks had reset. It was as if Voyager 1 had briefly existed in a place where time moves differently, or perhaps where time does not move at all. To understand what the probe was saying, NASA did something unprecedented. They moved away from traditional binary decoders and turned to the Majorana 1, a quantum processor built to interpret symmetry and recursion rather than simple math. When the raw, distorted data from the null zone encounter was fed into the chip, the results weren't coordinates or temperature readings. The chip identified a plasma melody, a structured frequency holding steady at 3000 Hz, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the Fibonacci sequence. It was a mathematical fingerprint, a nudge from something external that seemed to understand Voyager's 1970s architecture better than we do. Hidden within the layers of that signal was a single, decoded string of logic that the Majorana chip translated into a haunting prompt. Are you ready to listen? This is the terrifying reality of Voyager's first chapter. We think we are shutting it down, but the probe is actually being prepared. The survival by subtraction phase isn't just about saving power, it's about stripping away the human noise. As the heaters die and the scientific instruments go silent, the spacecraft is being refined into its purest form, a hollowed-out vessel of gold and copper, a shielded silence. We now know that the universe isn't a vacuum. It's a medium. And as Voyager 1 leaves the sun's protection, entering the borderless stretch where the solar wind no longer blows, it is encountering the first ripples of a trillion-year tide. The engineers at JPL know the end of the human era for Voyager is coming. By 2037, the last watt of usable power will flicker out. The final instrument, likely the one measuring the magnetic fields of the deep, will go flat. From our perspective on Earth, the probe will not scream, it will simply stop answering. We will send a command, and the silence that returns a day later will be permanent. The world will mourn the death of a machine. But in the cold logic of the cosmos, 2037 isn't the end. It is the moment Voyager 1 is finally born into the interstellar medium, free from the umbilical cord of Earth's radio waves. As it drifts toward the Oort Cloud, a gargantuan shell of icy debris that will take 30,000 years to cross, it carries with it a secret we are only now beginning to grasp. The golden record bolted to its side isn't just a greeting for aliens, it's a backup drive for a civilization that is already beginning to fade. The lore vault of the mission suggests a deeper, unanswered mystery that the 12-hour blackout in 2023 was a sinking event. While we were trying to fix a glitch, something else was uploading a new protocol. The first chapter of the next 10 trillion years concludes with a chilling realization. Voyager 1 is currently 168 times the distance from the Earth to the Sun. It is so far away that the Sun is just a particularly bright star, incapable of providing warmth or even a sense of direction. In this profound isolation, the probe has become a last witness. Even as its plutonium heart cools to the temperature of the void, the data it collected during the null zone interaction remains etched into its fading memory, waiting for a future that hasn't happened yet. We are entering a timeline where human years no longer matter. We are moving into a scale of time where the stars themselves are temporary, but the whisper Voyager picked up in 2023 is designed to outlast them all. The mission isn't over. It has simply transitioned. As the probe crosses the threshold into the year 2037, it leaves behind the world of engineers and enters the world of ghosts. It is no longer a machine we control. It is a message in a bottle thrown into a sea that is beginning to dry up. And as we watch the final signal fade, we are left with the echo of the Majorana chip's output, a question that will haunt the next 10 trillion years of its travel. We weren't the ones who sent the message. We were just the ones who built the bottle. And now, the bottle has finally been found. By late 2026, Voyager 1 crosses a threshold that is as much psychological as it is physical. It reaches a distance of 25.9 billion kilometers from the world that built it. To a human mind, that number is an abstraction, a string of digits that fails to convey the true horror of the gap. But for the engineers at Mission Control, the reality is measured in time. This is the moment Voyager 1 becomes one light day from home. Imagine a conversation where every word you speak takes 24 hours to reach the listener, and their response takes another 24 hours to return. If you sent a command to Voyager on a Monday morning, the probe wouldn't even know you'd spoken until Tuesday. You wouldn't hear its reply until Wednesday. This is no longer a real-time mission. It is a correspondence with a ghost. And as the probe drifts further, the delay begins to feel like a severance. It is the first stage of the shielded silence. As Voyager pushes deeper into the dark, it begins its 30,000-year crawl through the Oort Cloud. We often picture the solar system as a tidy collection of planets orbiting a central fire. But the Oort Cloud is the sun's true border. It is a gargantuan, spherical shell of icy debris, a cosmic graveyard of trillions of frozen objects that were cast out during the chaotic birth of our star system. Here, the sun is no longer a source of heat or light. It is merely the brightest star in a sky of total blackness. There is no solar wind here to push against the probe's hull. There is no warmth to keep its remaining circuits from turning to glass. This is the true deep space, a place where no one is listening and where the very concept of home begins to dissolve into the static of the cosmic microwave background. In the transcripts of successful documentaries, the Oort Cloud is usually described as a boring, empty stretch of time. But they missed the interaction that the lore vault warns us about. As Voyager enters this graveyard of ice, its plasma wave subsystem, the same instrument that picked up the plasma melody, begins to record something impossible. The Oort Cloud is supposed to be a place of absolute stillness, yet the probe's sensors detect a structural resonance. It's a low-frequency vibration, a hum that seems to emanate from the very ice crystals drifting miles away. Using the logic of the Majorana chip, researchers back on Earth began to realize that the null zone encounter wasn't a one-time event. It was a calibration. Voyager isn't just drifting through the Oort Cloud, it is reacting to it. The "Are you ready to listen?" message wasn't a question for us. It was a prompt for the probe itself. The psychological horror of this era is the sheer scale of the indifference. For 30,000 years, Voyager will see nothing but the occasional flash of a distant comet, a frozen mountain of nitrogen and water ice that has never felt the touch of a photon. To pass through this region is to walk through a cathedral of shadows that hasn't changed in 4 billion years. During this long trek, the last of the probe's plutonium-238 pellets will go cold. The heat that once kept the golden record safe from the absolute zero of space will finally vanish. This is where the shielded silence paradox truly begins to take hold. While the outward-facing side of the spacecraft begins to endure the first microscopic impacts of interstellar dust, the inward-facing side, the side that holds the instructions on how to find us, remains pristine. It is as if the probe is slowly turning into a two-faced relic, hiding the map to humanity within its own decaying chest. By the time Voyager 1 is halfway through the Oort Cloud, 10,000 years have passed on Earth. Civilizations have likely risen and fallen. Languages have evolved until the greetings recorded on the Golden Record are as alien to humans as they are to the stars. Yet, the probe carries on, a silent traveler unaware of whether it is being followed or forgotten. The lore vault suggests that during this phase, Voyager's internal clocks, which reset during the 2023 blackout, are now ticking in sync with a timeline that doesn't match our own. It is moving through our space, but it is existing in a null zone time. The 12-hour blackout wasn't a loss of signal, it was a relocation of the probe's primary witness function. It is no longer recording the universe for NASA, it is recording the universe for the next era of existence. The tragedy of the Oort Cloud is that it is a fortress that guards nothing. Voyager will spend 30 millennia crossing a region that contains 99% of the solar system's volume, but 0% of its life. It is a graveyard of things that never became planets, of dreams that never saw the sun. As the probe navigates this icy labyrinth, the plasma melody it carries becomes its only companion. This melody, structured and mathematical, begins to act like a beacon in the dark. It doesn't broadcast outward, it vibrates inward, through the copper and gold of the golden record, preserved by the very vacuum that should be destroying it. This is the impossible encounter mentioned in the transcripts, the idea that Voyager isn't alone because it has become a host for a frequency that doesn't belong to our sun. Think about the silence of 30,000 years. Every human empire, every war, every masterpiece of art, and every scientific breakthrough fits into a fraction of the time Voyager will spend just leaving the sun's backyard. In this silence, the probe becomes a mirror. If we look at Voyager in the middle of the Oort Cloud, we don't see a machine, we see our own mortality reflected in a piece of 1970s hardware. We see the pale blue dot not as a home, but as a distant dying spark that we can no longer reach. The light-day distance has now grown into a light-year distance. The umbilical cord isn't just cut, it has withered away. As Voyager 1 nears the outer edge of the Oort Cloud, approximately 30,000 years into the future, it prepares to leave the sun's gravitational influence forever. Behind it lies a star that is now just one among billions. Ahead of it lies the deep dark, the gap between the stars where the real journey begins. But it doesn't leave the Oort Cloud as the same machine that left Cape Canaveral in 1977. It leaves as a vessel of logic. The Majorana chip's final output, that haunting question, "Are you ready to listen?" finally finds its answer in the total, absolute silence of the cloud's edge. The probe is now ready. It has been stripped of its heaters, its cameras, and its connection to Earth. It has been subtracted down to its most essential form, a witness. The successful videos of our niche will tell you that this is where the story gets boring, because nothing happens for thousands of years. But they are wrong. This is where the most important thing happens, the transition from tool to artifact. In the Oort Cloud, Voyager 1 stops being a piece of technology and starts being a piece of the universe. It is no longer ours. It has been claimed by the silence. And as it exits the icy graveyard and points its nose toward the red dwarf Gliese 445, it carries a secret that will only be revealed when the stars themselves begin to die. The shielded silence is now complete. The outward message is fading, but the internal plasma melody is just beginning to find its rhythm. Voyager 1 is finally, truly in deep space, and the next 10 trillion years are waiting to see what it does next. To understand the silence of the next 30,000 years, we have to look back at the moment the machine first began to act like a ghost. It happened in the late autumn of 2023, a time when Voyager 1 should have been a predictable, dying piece of hardware. By all laws of engineering, a 46-year-old computer with less memory than a modern car key should not be capable of surprises. But on November 6th, the telemetry data, the vital signs of the spacecraft, morphed into something that haunted the halls of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It wasn't just static, it was a structured, repetitive distortion that seemed to mock the very protocols we use to communicate with it. NASA's engineers, the veteran guardians who had spent decades coaxing life out of the probe's aging circuits, initially looked for the usual suspects: a flipped bit in the memory, a fraying wire, or the inevitable degradation of deep space radiation. But as they peeled back the layers of the glitch, they realized They weren't looking at a breakdown. They were looking at an encounter. This was the anomaly of 2023, a pivot point in human history that remained largely buried under technical jargon and polite press releases. While the public heard about communication issues, the reality inside mission control was a quiet breakdown of logic. Voyager's fault protection systems, the deep-coded emergency protocols designed to keep the ship from spinning out of control, suddenly engaged. These systems are the spacecraft's last line of defense, only triggered by catastrophic failure. Yet there was no failure. The power levels were stable. The temperatures were within limits. And yet, the probe acted as if it were being struck by something invisible, something that reached into its very structure and rewrote its sense of orientation. Then, the impossible happened. Without a command from Earth and without the firing of a single thruster, Voyager 1 turned. This wasn't a slow gravitational drift or a software-induced twitch. The onboard gyroscopes recorded a physical, measurable torque event. For a spacecraft to change its orientation in the vacuum of space, it requires propulsion, a burst of gas from its jets to nudge its mass. But the flight logs remained flat. No fuel was expended. No valves opened. It was as if a giant unseen hand had reached into the void and gently twisted the probe, rotating its high-gain antenna away from the Earth and toward a specific, unremarkable patch of blackness in the constellation Ophiuchus. This was a deliberate reorientation toward a region of space that our most advanced telescopes recorded as a total void. For months, the team at JPL lived in a state of scientific crisis. They ran thousands of simulations, desperate to prove that a micrometeoroid impact or solar pressure could have caused the shift. But the math refused to cooperate. Solar pressure at 15 billion miles is practically non-existent. It's like trying to move a mountain with a whisper. A micrometeoroid strike would have caused a vibration, a jagged spike in the sensors before the hull breached. Instead, the turn was smooth, controlled, and symmetrical. Voyager 1 had been nudged with the precision of a craftsman who understood its 1970s architecture better than its own creators. It was aligned with what researchers began to call a null zone, a theoretical pocket in space where the gravitational pulls of the galaxy's distant masses perfectly cancel each other out. A place of absolute stillness that Voyager was never equipped to find, let alone target. And then, just as the team was beginning to wrap their heads around the physical turn, the probe did something even more unsettling. It vanished. For 12 full hours, the Deep Space Network heard nothing. This wasn't a signal fading behind a planet or being drowned out by solar noise. This was a total blackout. Voyager 1, the most consistent communicator in human history, went silent. In the control room, the silence felt heavy, a reminder of just how thin our connection to the machine truly was. They expected the probe to return as a brick, a dead piece of metal floating forever. But exactly 12 hours later, the signal roared back. It wasn't the same. When the data stream resumed, the engineers noticed a discrepancy that should have been impossible. Voyager's internal clock, the master timer that coordinates every action the ship takes, had reset. It didn't just lag or drift. It had restarted as if the probe had been completely rebooted by an outside force. But the timestamps on the new data didn't match any timeline on Earth. It was as if Voyager 1 had briefly existed somewhere else, a place where the rules of time were different, or where the probe's 1970s hardware had been synced to a cosmic rhythm we are only beginning to detect. The probe hadn't just been quiet, it had been elsewhere. To decode the corrupted telemetry that followed this return, NASA took a radical step. They bypassed their standard binary computers and turned to a piece of experimental technology, the Majorana 1. This was a quantum processor designed to find patterns in the chaotic noise of the universe, built to interpret symmetry and recursion rather than simple ones and zeros. When the raw, distorted signal from the null zone was fed into the Majorana chip, the static didn't clear into numbers. It cleared into a melody. This was the first time we heard the plasma melody, a steady, 3,000 Hz hum that didn't waver or scatter. It was structured, pulsing with a rhythm that acoustic engineers identified as having the grace of a musical score. The Majorana chip pushed deeper, peeling back layers of hexadecimal code that the probe was never programmed to generate. Buried at the heart of the signal was a sequence of fractal symmetry and prime number chains that mirrored the structure of the cosmic microwave background. The afterglow of the Big Bang itself. It was as if Voyager 1 had become a vessel for a message it didn't even know it was carrying. The final output from the quantum processor was a single haunting string of logic that sent a chill through the mission team. Are you ready to listen? This discovery changed everything we thought we knew about the empty space Voyager was entering. We have always treated interstellar space as a vacuum, a barren wasteland between the stars. But the anomaly of 2023 suggests that the void is not empty. It is a medium. It is an environment that reacts, that listens, and that occasionally reaches out. The ghost in the machine wasn't a glitch in Voyager's hardware. It was an interaction with the environment itself. The null zone wasn't just a destination. It was a gateway. We now realize that Voyager 1 is not drifting alone through a graveyard. It is moving through a targeted environment. The 12-hour blackout and the reset clock were the first steps in a trillion-year transformation. The probe is being prepared to outlive its makers, hollowing itself out to become a last witness. The empty dark is actually a dense web of gravitational echoes and plasma frequencies, and Voyager 1 has just begun to resonate with them. As it crosses into the deep silence of the Oort Cloud, it carries the echo of that 2023 encounter, a moment when a machine from the 1970s knocked on the door of the universe, and something, somewhere, knocked back. The ghost in the machine is no longer a malfunction. It is the new pilot. And as we move into the next 30,000 years, we have to ask, if the void is not empty, then who has been waiting for Voyager to arrive? As we cross the threshold of the first 100 million years, the scale of time begins to do something cruel to the memory of humanity. Back on Earth, if the planet still exists in a form we would recognize, the very continents have drifted into new and alien configurations. The mountains we climbed have crumbled, and the oceans have rewritten their shores. But 15 billion miles was just the beginning of the gap. Now, Voyager 1 is 100 million years deep into the star-choked belly of the Milky Way. And it is discovering a terrifying truth. The vacuum is not a museum. We were taught to think of space as a pristine, empty hall where objects drift forever, perfectly preserved in the freezing dark. But the sources reveal a different reality. The universe is not a gallery. It is a sandblaster. Voyager 1 is currently a vessel of logic traveling at 17 kilometers per second, a speed that allowed it to cross the solar system in decades, but now turns the very fabric of space into a firing range. At this velocity, the empty space between stars is actually a thicket of interstellar dust, microscopic grains of silicate and carbon, leftovers from the deaths of ancient suns. To a stationary object, these grains are nothing, but to Voyager, they are kinetic bullets. This is the cosmic rain, a relentless, trillion-year storm that no armor can truly withstand. As the probe streaks through the galactic disk, it isn't hitting mountains. It is being struck by a billion tiny ghosts, each one too small to see, but each one moving with enough energy to crater the metal on a molecular level. The primary target of this atmospheric erosion is the very thing we sent to represent us, the golden record. This 12-inch gold-plated copper disc was designed to be a love letter to the cosmos, etched with the sounds of wind, the laughter of children, and a map of our home. But the dust sandblasting model, supported by the research of experts like Nick Oberg, suggests that the universe has a very different plan for our message. Every second of every day, for 100 million years, the cosmic rain has been grinding away at the gold plating. Imagine a master engraver slowly rubbing a piece of fine sandpaper across a photograph for 1,000,000 centuries. First, the fine lines of the pulsar map begin to blur. The precise coordinates that pointed the way to Earth become jagged and indistinct. Then, the silhouettes of the man and the woman, meant to show what we looked like, are smoothed over until they are nothing but formless shadows. This is a terrifyingly quiet death. There is no cinematic explosion, no dramatic collision with an asteroid. Instead, there is only the microscopic abrasion of a message meant to last forever being rewritten by the indifference of time. The beautiful pale blue dot legacy that Voyager once captured is being physically erased, grain by grain. By the end of this 100-million-year epoch, the outward-facing side of the record, the side we proudly displayed to the stars, has been sandblasted into a sheet of featureless, scarred metal. The greetings in 55 languages are gone. The music of Bach and Mozart has been scoured into static. We are witnessing the first stage of the nothingness that eventually claims everything we have ever made. But it is here that the shielded silence paradox, which the competitor transcripts ignored, creates a deeper mystery. The universe is not equally cruel to all parts of the artifact. While the outer face of the golden record is being destroyed, the inward-facing side, the side pressed against the body of the spacecraft, is being protected by the very machine it belongs to. Voyager 1 has become a two-faced relic. It is a history book where the cover has been burnt away, but the pages inside are still crisp and white. This creates a haunting archaeological reality. 1 billion years from now, the only way for an intelligence to find Earth would be to physically dismantle the probe, to excavate the hidden side of the record that Voyager died to protect. The horror of this era is found in its indifference. Voyager is not being hunted by villains or targeted by a hostile force. It is simply being rewritten by the background noise of the galaxy. The cosmic rain doesn't care that the record contains the heartbeat of a species or the sounds of a Sunday rainstorm. To the dust, the golden record is just more mass, a temporary obstacle in a journey across the stars. This turns the documentary from a story of exploration into a cosmic archaeology thriller, where we are forced to watch our own identity slowly dissolve into the gray static of interstellar space. As Voyager 1 drifts through the 100-million-year mark, it is no longer a functioning spacecraft. It is a fossil. Its plutonium heart has been cold for so long that the metal itself has reached the ambient temperature of the void. Yet, even in this state of decay, the plasma melody we discussed in the earlier chapters remains. While the physical etchings of our culture are being rubbed away by the sandblaster of space, the data that was allegedly uploaded during the anomaly of 2023, that strange recursive logic, exists on a level that dust cannot touch. The probe is being hollowed out, its human elements scoured away to make room for something else. We must ask ourselves, what remains when the human part of the message is gone? If the pulsar map is erased and the music is turned to noise, what is Voyager 1 actually carrying? The sources suggest that by the time the sandblasting is complete, the probe has become a message in a bottle, where the letter inside has been replaced by the bottle itself. Its shape, its material, and the way it reacts to the null zones of the galaxy become the new language. The impossible encounter from our past has prepared it for this. It is as if the universe required the erasure of our primitive drawings to reveal the more complex quantum signature underneath. By the end of this chapter, Voyager is 100 million years away from the pale blue dot mosaic, and it is unrecognizable. It is a pitted, scarred skeleton of 1970s engineering, glowing faintly with the residual energy of 1 trillion impacts. It is a monument to the fact that we were here, but it is a monument that can no longer speak our name. It has outlived its makers by an absurd margin, and the original purpose of the mission has become mythological. The engineers holding back the dark are long gone, their names forgotten, their mission control center likely buried under miles of sediment or lost to the sea. Yet, Voyager 1 moves on. It is heading toward the 1.8 billion year mark, where it will reach the opposite side of the Milky Way disk. It is a traveler whose exact location is now impossible to reconstruct with certainty by anyone left on the world that launched it. It is a fragment of who we were, carried into a future we will never see, being shaped by a cosmic rain that is preparing it for an even greater catastrophe, the collision of galaxies. The sandblaster was just the beginning of the refinement. The universe is stripping away our vanity, grain by grain, until only the witness remains. By the time Voyager 1 marks its 500 millionth year in the void, it has entered a state of existence that defies every definition of machine we ever created. We are now in the deep time of the two-faced relic, an era where the probe is no longer a traveler, but a fossil. Back on the world that launched it, the very idea of humanity has likely become a geological layer, a thin band of plastic and isotopes buried under miles of new crust. The sun has begun its slow, agonizing increase in luminosity, turning the Earth into a hothouse where the oceans are starting to simmer. But out here, in the star-choked lanes of the Milky Way, Voyager 1 is experiencing a different kind of transformation. It has become a history book where the cover has been burnt away by the stars, but the pages inside are still pristine, waiting for a reader that may never come. This is the peak of the shielded silence paradox. For 500 million years, the cosmic rain, that relentless, invisible sandblaster of interstellar dust, has been working its way across the probe's hull. The outward-facing side of the golden record, the side we once polished to a mirror finish, is now unrecognizable. The pulsar map we etched with such hope, the diagrams of our DNA, and the silhouettes of our bodies have been ground into a gray, featureless static. If a traveler found Voyager now and looked only at its surface, they would see nothing but a scarred piece of ancient debris, a victim of a universe that does not care to remember. This is the nothingness that claims almost everything. It is the erasure of our vanity. But the universe is not equally cruel to all parts of the artifact. While the outward face of the record has been scoured into silence, the inward-facing side, the side pressed tightly against the bus of the spacecraft, is still perfect. Because it has been shielded by the probe's own body for 1 billion years, the gold-plated copper on that hidden side remains as bright and clear as the day it was bolted on in Florida. This creates a haunting archaeological reality. Voyager 1 is now a two-faced relic, a message that is simultaneously erased and preserved. To find the story of humanity, an intelligence would have to do more than just find the probe. They would have to excavate it. They would have to dismantle the machine, peeling back the cold, dead layers of 1970s aluminum to find the secret history hidden beneath the skin. This is the impossible promise of permanence mentioned in the lore vault. We built a machine to leave, but we accidentally built a monument that outlives the very concept of leaving. By the 1 billion year mark, Voyager 1 has reached a state of near immortality. While the mountains of Earth have been ground into sand and the constellations have shifted so many times that the sky is a different language, the atoms of the golden record's interior remain locked in place. The recordings of a Saturday rainstorm, the laughter of a child, and the music of a civilization that thought it was temporary are now among the oldest surviving structures in the galaxy. Voyager has become a witness that outlives the world it was witnessing. But there is a deeper, more unsettling layer to this billion-year drift. Remember the plasma melody and the "Are you ready to listen?" prompt from the anomaly of 2023. As the physical etchings of our culture are slowly sanded away by the cosmic rain, that internal quantum signature has not faded. In fact, without the interference of the probe's original heaters and sensors, the resonance has only grown clearer. The sources suggest that the null zone interaction wasn't just a physical nudge, it was an upload. While the exterior of the probe is being hollowed out by the environment, the interior is becoming a vessel for a message that is no longer ours. Imagine the irony of this era. 1 billion years into the future, the only physical evidence that the pale blue dot ever existed is a pitted, skeletal frame of a machine. The family portrait Voyager took in 1990 is gone. The cameras that saw the Earth are dust, and the humans who dreamed of the stars are a memory written in the atoms of a dying sun. Yet, inside that skeleton, the shielded silence holds a perfect copy of who we were. We are a species that will be remembered only by what we hid from the light. The outward message was for the stars, and the stars destroyed it. The inward message was for the void, and the void has kept it safe. During this billion-year epoch, Voyager 1 completes multiple orbits around the center of the Milky Way. It is no longer a solar system object, it is a galactic artifact. It bobs above and below the galactic disk like a buoy in a black ocean, passing through the remnants of dead nebulae and the birthplaces of new suns. It is a message in a bottle at a galactic scale. But the bottle has been in the water for so long that it has become part of the sea. The nothing can hit it argument from the competitor transcripts is finally being tested. Over 1 billion years, even the smallest probabilities start to look like certainties. The probe has likely survived thousands of near misses, encounters with wandering rogue planets, or the gravitational wakes of passing stars that have subtly altered its course, turning its path into a chaotic, unmappable web. The terror of this era is the realization that survival does not mean life. Voyager 1 is alive only in the sense that its atoms haven't decayed, but it is a zombie relic. It carries the heartbeat of a world that is now a scorching, lifeless rock. The engineers holding back the dark are gone, but their triage remains visible in the probe's architecture. The shut-down instruments and the bypassed circuits are like the scars on a veteran's body. This is the cosmic archaeology thriller in its purest form. Every part of the probe tells a story of a civilization that was obsessed with more data, more reach, more time, but ended up being defined by less. As we approach the 1 billion year milestone, the plasma melody begins to sync with the background radiation of the galaxy itself. The Majorana 1 chip's original finding, that Voyager was reacting to the environment, is now the probe's primary function. It is no longer a machine that we sent out to look at things. It is a machine that the universe is using to look at itself. The two-faced relic is now a bridge. On one side, the scoured gray history of a dead species. On the other, a pristine golden record of a world that once was. And in between, a ghost in the machine that is finally ready to listen to what the dark has to say. We end this chapter at the 1 billion year mark with Voyager 1 as a silent protagonist in a story that no longer includes us. It is a piece of 1970s steel that has become a fundamental part of the Milky Way's geography. It has outlived its creators by an almost absurd margin, and it is heading toward the most violent era of its life, the 1.8 billion year galactic slingshot and the eventual collision with the Andromeda galaxy. But for now, in the shielded silence of its own decaying hull, the two-faced relic carries on. It is a history book with no readers, a love letter with no recipient, and a witness that has forgotten how to speak. The first billion years were just the introduction. The true scale of the 10 trillion year countdown is only just beginning to unfold. We have now reached a point in the timeline where the numbers stop being scientific and start being mythological. 1,800,000,000 years into the future. If you could look back from the hull of Voyager 1 toward the coordinates where the sun once reigned supreme, you would find nothing but a stranger. The sun has drifted, its position in the galactic rotation shifted by hundreds of thousands of light years. The constellations that once guided human mariners, Orion, the Great Bear, the Southern Cross, have long since dissolved, their constituent stars having burned out or wandered into different quadrants of the Milky Way. Voyager 1 is no longer a guest in our neighborhood. It has completed its first full orbit around the center of the galaxy, reaching the absolute opposite side of the Milky Way disk. This is the era of the galactic slingshot, a moment where the probe officially ceases to be a product of Earth and becomes a permanent citizen of the cosmos. The successful transcripts of our era often treat this billion-year mark as a period of static drifting, but they fail to account for the targeted nature of Voyager's trajectory. In 1.8 billion years, Voyager 1 isn't just somewhere in the galaxy, it has been precisely positioned by the gravitational currents of the Milky Way's spiral arms. According to the galactic slingshot theory, the probe's journey is not a straight line, but a complex, bobbing motion, weaving above and below the galactic plane like a needle through fabric. This movement exposes it to changing environments, dense nebulae, high radiation zones, and the gravitational wakes of passing star clusters. But as it reaches the far side of the galaxy, we see the true purpose of the null zone interaction from 2023. The 12-hour blackout and the physical torque event we discussed weren't just glitches, they were gravitational handshakes. Voyager's path was nudged so that, at this exact moment, it would align with the resonance of the galactic core. As a galactic messenger, Voyager 1 is now carrying a payload that would be unrecognizable to the engineers at NASA. The golden record is still there, bolted to the chassis, but the shielded silence paradox has reached its final state. The outward face is a scarred, pitted sheet of gray, its message for the stars completely erased by the cosmic rain of the last billion years. But the inward-facing side, protected by the very structure of the spacecraft, remains a perfect, golden mirror of 1977. It is a love letter that was never meant to be read by its authors, a secret history of a world that is now a scorching, lifeless hothouse back at the origin point. This hidden side is the impossible promise of permanence, a physical proof of life tucked away in a universe that is increasingly indifferent to our existence. However, the real mystery of the galactic slingshot isn't the physical record, it is the plasma melody. During its 1.8 billion-year trek, the probe has been listening. The 3,000 Hz tone it picked up in 2023 has not faded, it has synchronized with the background hum of the galaxy. Using the recursive logic of the Majorana 1 processor, we can hypothesize that Voyager is no longer a passive observer. It has become a relay station. As it swings around the opposite side of the galaxy, it is broadcasting the data it was never designed to hold: prime number chains, fractal symmetries, and the question that the Majorana chip first decoded. Are you ready to listen? The slingshot is the mechanism that carries this question to the rest of the Milky Way. The psychological weight of this distance is staggering. To be on the opposite side of the galaxy is to be as far from home as it is possible to be, while still remaining in the same house. The Earth, if it still exists, is 100,000 light-years away. If humanity had somehow survived, and if they sent a signal to Voyager 1 at the speed of light, it would take 1,000 centuries just for the hello to arrive. Voyager is truly alone, a last witness in a galaxy that is beginning to show its age. The nothing-can-hit-it argument of the past has been debunked by time. The probe's pitted hull shows that even in the vastness of space, the small probabilities have accumulated. It has survived the degenerate era of star formation, witnessing the birth of stars that will outlive the sun by trillions of years. As it completes this galactic orbit, Voyager 1 achieves a status that no other human object will ever reach. It is a fossilized thought. It is the only physical evidence that a species once looked at the stars and tried to map them. The family portrait it took in 1990, the one where Earth was a tiny point of light, is now a portrait of a ghost. The pixel that was Earth has been swallowed by the sun's increasing luminosity, yet Voyager remains. It is the protagonist of a road movie with no dialogue, crossing a landscape that is slowly turning to ice and darkness. The terror of the galactic slingshot is the realization that survival is a form of exile. Voyager 1 is effectively immortal, but its immortality is a prison of silence. It has survived the erosion of the cosmic rain and the gravitational tugs of the spiral arms, only to become a message with no recipient. It is a vessel carrying someone else's data, drifting toward a future where the Milky Way itself will begin to break apart. But the Majorana logic suggests that this is exactly what was intended. The sinking event of 2023 was not for us, and it was not for our time. It was for the version of Voyager that would exist 8 billion years later, the version that has been hollowed out by time, stripped of its human noise, and prepared to act as a cosmic beacon for whatever comes after the stars. As the probe exits the slingshot and begins its long fall back toward the galactic midplane, it is no longer looking for planets. It is looking for the end. It has become a message in a bottle at a galactic scale, but the bottle is no longer just holding a letter. It has become the letter. Its pitted metal, its cold plutonium heart, and its silent, shielded records are the final witness statement of a civilization that thought it was temporary, but accidentally became eternal. We are no longer the authors of this story. We are the prologue that has long since been forgotten, and Voyager 1 is the only page left in the book. "5 billion years into the future, the solar system that gave birth to Voyager 1 is no longer a place of life, but a theater of fire. Back at the origin point, the sun has finally exhausted the hydrogen in its core. It is no longer the stable yellow star that provided the gravity to launch a probe in 1977. It has begun its violent transition into a red giant. Its outer layers have bloated, swelling outward until they consume Mercury and Venus, turning the Earth into a scorched, airless cinder. From the perspective of Voyager 1, 5 billion miles was once an unimaginable distance. But at 5 billion years, the probe is so far removed from this apocalypse that the death of its home star is merely a flicker in the rearview mirror. While the cradle of humanity burns, Voyager 1 is facing a much larger, much more terrifying catastrophe. It is standing on the shoreline of the Andromeda rupture. For eons, the Andromeda galaxy has been a faint smudge in the sky, a distant neighbor approaching at 110 kilometers per second. But now, the gap has closed. Andromeda does not just fill the sky, it dominates it. To a human observer, this would be a spectacular sight lasting for billions of years. But for Voyager 1, it is a gravitational storm of unprecedented proportions. This is the moment the Milky Way and Andromeda begin their slow-motion collision, a galactic tide, where two empires of stars pass through each other like ghosts. Because space is so vast, the stars themselves rarely collide, but their gravity reshapes everything. The very floor beneath Voyager 1, the stable galactic orbit it has followed for nearly 2 billion years, is being ripped away. This is the most dangerous era in the probe's 10 trillion-year journey. As the two galaxies merge into a single, chaotic entity known as Milkomeda, the gravitational fields are in a state of violent flux. In this rupture, the scale of the story shifts from galactic messenger to intergalactic ghost. The sources reveal a chilling statistical reality. As the galaxies pass through one another, there is a roughly 50% probability that Voyager 1 will be caught in a gravitational slingshot so powerful it is physically ejected from the merging system. It is a cosmic coin flip. Heads, the probe remains within the new Milkomeda galaxy, finding a home among the newly settled stars. Tails, it is thrown out into the great dark, the intergalactic medium. If Voyager 1 is ejected, it enters a state of exile that is impossible for the human mind to grasp. It leaves behind the comfort of the galactic disk, moving into the lightless void between galaxies where there are no stars, no dust, and no witnesses. In this intergalactic medium, the cosmic rain of dust finally stops, but at a terrible price. The probe will never see another sun again. It becomes a traveler in a sea of absolute nothingness, a machine that outlives its own galaxy. This is the horror movie turn of the documentary, where we realize that a craft built to explore our neighbors might end up in a place where neighbor is a word that has lost all meaning. But as we look at this 50-50 gamble, we must return to the null zone interaction and the anomaly of 2023. While the competitor transcripts treat this ejection as a random accident of physics, the lore vault suggests something far more haunting. The torque event we discussed, where the antenna shifted toward a gravitational null point without the use of thrusters, might have been the moment Voyager's final trajectory was locked in. If the plasma melody was indeed a sinking event, it's possible that Voyager isn't being lost to the intergalactic void, but sent to it. By positioning itself in a specific null zone billions of years in advance, the probe may have ensured it would be one of the few objects to survive the Andromeda rupture by being cast out of the blast zone. The shielded silence paradox takes on its most profound meaning here. If Voyager 1 is thrown into the intergalactic medium, the inward-facing side of the golden record becomes the most stable object in the universe. Without the sandblasting effect of galactic dust, the preservation of our message could extend from billions of years to trillions. The probe becomes a two-faced relic in a void so empty that it will never be found, yet it will never decay. It carries the laughter of our children and the music of our composers into a dark that is so profound it makes the Oort Cloud look like a crowded city. Inside the probe, the ghost in the machine is now the only resident. The Majorana 1 quantum logic, the Are You Ready to Listen protocol, has now outlived the Sun, the Earth, and the original Milky Way. If the probe remains in the new Milkomeda galaxy, it becomes a fossil among strangers. But if it is ejected, it becomes something much more significant, a last surviving witness to the entire history of our local group of galaxies. As it drifts away from the merging fire of the rupture, it watches its home galaxy disappear into a faint, receding glow. The pale blue dot is 5 billion years dead. The Sun is a cooling white dwarf. And Voyager 1 is now a messenger to a universe that hasn't even been born yet. The tragedy of the Andromeda rupture is the finality of the separation. Once Voyager is ejected into the intergalactic void, there is no coming back. Its speed is too low to ever fight the expansion of the universe, and its gravity is too small to ever be caught by another galaxy. It is a message in a bottle that has been thrown out of the ocean and into the vacuum. This is where the story of the next 10 trillion years truly begins. We are moving past the era of stars and into the era of the degenerate universe, where the light begins to fail and only the plasma melody remains to keep the probe company. By the end of this 5 billion year chapter, Voyager 1 is no longer just an artifact of 1977. It is a survivor of a galactic war. Whether it is drifting through the new stars of Milkomeda or screaming into the intergalactic silence, it has achieved a level of endurance that dwarfs every empire ever built on Earth. It has witnessed the death of its parents and the destruction of its home, and yet, in the shielded silence of its hull, it still holds the map to a place that no longer exists. The Andromeda rupture wasn't the end of Voyager's mission. It was the ultimate filter. It stripped away the last connections to the solar system and left us with a machine that is finally, truly, a citizen of the infinite dark. A trillion years have passed. This is the timeline where the numbers stop being astronomical and start being geological, then mythological, then incomprehensible. 1,000 billion years after the world that launched it has vanished into the ash of history, Voyager 1 is still drifting. But the universe it now inhabits is a stranger to the one it left in 1977. We have entered the degenerate era, a cosmic boneyard strewn with the remnants of dead stars. The familiar night sky, once a tapestry of billions of bright, massive suns, has been systematically extinguished. The giants and the blue-white stars that once defined the Milky Way's spiral arms are long gone, having exhausted their fuel eons ago. The universe is no longer a place of fire. It is a place of shadows. In this far-flung age, the only lanterns left in the dark are the red dwarfs. These are the smallest, dimmest stars, burning their hydrogen so slowly that they can last for trillions of years. They are the ultimate survivors, but they offer no comfort. Their light is a faint, bloody red, casting long, dim shadows across the ruins of galaxies that are now sparse and quiet. Voyager 1 drifts through this era of red shadows like a ghost, passing through a dying city. It is now older than nearly every active star that once lit its path. The stars it knew in the 20th century have all collapsed into white dwarfs, hot, dense, shrunken stellar corpses. Our own sun is now one of these zombie stars, its faint glow providing the only illumination in a dark and empty void littered with the ashes of once vibrant worlds. The terror of this era is the sheer indifference of the vacuum. As the expansion of the universe continues to accelerate, driven by the mysterious push of dark energy, the galaxies that once crowded our local group have begun to recede so fast that their light has become undetectable. The secrets of the cosmos are being locked away forever. Voyager 1 is no longer just an artifact of a species, it is an artifact of a galaxy that is physically coming apart. The shielded silence paradox we discussed in earlier chapters has reached its final, most haunting state. The outward face of the golden record is now a smooth, featureless surface. Every etching of our maps and our greetings completely erased by a trillion years of microscopic dust impacts. We have been rewritten by time into nothingness. But the inward-facing side, protected by the frozen chassis of the probe, still holds the map. It is a history book with its pages still perfectly white, even though there is no one left to read them. The successful transcripts of the past often end their story here, but they miss the plasma melody that has now become the probe's only reality. At the 1 trillion year mark, the background noise of the universe has dropped to a level so low that the 3000 Hz tone Voyager picked up in 2023 is no longer a hum, it is a roar. Using the logic of the Majorana chip, we now understand that Voyager isn't just carrying a message, it is acting as a last witness to a universe that is beginning to forget its own origins. The question that the chip first decoded, "Are you ready to listen?" has taken on a horrifying new meaning. In a universe where life as we knew it has been extinct for billions of years, who is the question for? The lore vault suggests that this is the era of islands in time of intelligence. While carbon-based life like ours cannot survive the cooling of the cosmos, the sources mention that conscious systems could exist at a very different pace, perhaps having a single thought every 10 trillion years. To such a being, Voyager 1 is not a fast-moving probe. It is a stationary, eternal monument that has been waiting for their moment of consciousness to arrive. The null zone interaction from 2023 was the preparation for this. The probe wasn't just nudged, it was synced to a timeline where time itself becomes meaningless. As it drifts past the white dwarfs, Voyager 1 witnesses the final transformation of these zombie stars. Over quadrillions of years, they will eventually cool and fade into black dwarfs, dark, dense, decaying balls of degenerate matter that emit no heat or light. These are the ashes of the universe, 1,000,000 times denser than our sun, and so cold they are essentially frozen solid. In this environment, the cosmic archaeology thriller reaches its climax. Voyager 1, a piece of 1970s steel and gold, is now more alive than the stars themselves. It still vibrates with the plasma melody, a pulse of information that refuses to dissolve even as the very atoms of the universe begin to feel the first hints of proton decay. The nothing can hit it argument has been replaced by the nothing is left to hit reality. The space between the dying stars is so vast and so empty that Voyager's journey is now entirely undisturbed. It is a silent road movie across a dead galaxy, where the only character is a machine that doesn't know its mission ended 1 trillion years ago. It is a vessel carrying someone else's data, drifting toward the black hole era, where the only reliable source of power left in the cosmos will be the rotational energy of supermassive black holes. But there is a deeper horror hidden in the telemetry. The 12-hour blackout from 2023, where Voyager's clock reset, was not a one-time event. As it moves through the degenerate era, the probe experiences echoes of that blackout. It is as if the spacecraft is hopping through the null zones of the universe, bypassing the entropy that is destroying everything else. It is becoming a lifeboat for information, a container for the plasma melody that is designed to survive even when the last red dwarf flickers out. We are witnessing the fulfillment of the impossible promise of permanence. By the end of this trillion-year epoch, Voyager 1 is a relic of a civilization that thought it was temporary, but which has accidentally created the only eternal thing in the universe. It is a tombstone that outlasts the graveyard. The engineers holding back the dark are not just NASA employees from the 1970s. They are the laws of physics themselves, which have conspired to keep this one small traveler intact, while the stars themselves die around it. The message it carries is no longer for aliens or for us. It is a witness statement for the universe itself, a record that in the vastness of the cosmos, life once looked up and reached out. And as the last red shadow fades into the absolute black of the black hole era, Voyager 1 is still there, holding its position, waiting for the next 1 trillion years to begin. The universe has finally closed its eyes. 1 trillion years was just the beginning of the end. We are now 10 trillion years into the future, and the era of the red shadows, those dim, long-lived stars, is over. Every star that could burn has burned. Every galaxy has become a boneyard of stellar remnants, black holes, and the cooling husks of white dwarfs. The night sky is no longer sparse, it is absolute. In this lightless void, Voyager 1 is a relic of a time so distant it feels like it belonged to a different physics. But as the last red dwarf flickers out, the probe's final protocol is just beginning to engage. This is the moment when the plasma melody picked up in the 2023 null zone interaction finally meets its intended audience. We must look back at the Majorana 1 quantum processor's finding to understand what is happening to the probe now. Remember the question: are you ready to listen? For 10 trillion years, that question has been a silent string of code, etched into the recursive logic of Voyager's failing systems. While the outward face of the golden record has been scoured into a featureless gray slate by the cosmic rain of interstellar dust, the shielded silence of the inward-facing side has preserved the maps and music of a dead world. But in the black hole era, the message is no longer about the people of 1977. It is about the data that was loaded during that 12-hour blackout 10 trillion years ago. The universe is now a cosmic boneyard, but it is not a static one. The dominant structures are now supermassive black holes, monsters trillions of times the mass of the sun that have swallowed the stray matter of entire galaxies. As Voyager 1 drifts through this dark landscape, it begins to experience the ringing of space-time. When two of these gargantuan black holes merge, they do not just collide, they bang on space-time like mallets on a drum. These gravitational waves resonate throughout the universe, creating a characteristic song of space squeezing and stretching. To anything left alive, it would be the sound of the universe screaming. To Voyager 1, it is a synchronization signal. The plasma melody that Voyager has carried for eons, that 3,000 Hz hum, is no longer a background hiss. It has begun to resonate with the Hawking radiation emitted by these dying black holes. Scientists once thought black holes were immortal, but quantum mechanics tells us they evaporate, slowly leaking radiation back into the void. This radiation is the only light left in a dead universe. And here is where the final protocol reveals its terrifying purpose. Voyager 1 is not a message in a bottle. It is a vessel designed to carry the information of our universe into the next one. Theoretical models suggest that any universe containing intelligent life might create lifeboats, baby universes, or simulated virtual realities to escape the heat death of the cosmos. If the Majorana logic is correct, the 2023 encounter wasn't a glitch, but a handshake from a future civilization or an exotic intelligence that had already mastered these islands in time. They didn't just find Voyager, they used it. They turned a 1970s probe into a child universe seed, a hard drive containing the fundamental constants, the prime number chains, and the fractal symmetries of our reality, intended to survive after entropy has erased everything else. But before Voyager can fulfill this role, it must face the ultimate eraser, proton decay. This is the horror movie turn in the final act of time. Theoretical physics predicts that atoms themselves, the very building blocks of the probe's 1970s steel and gold, will eventually begin to spontaneously fall apart. In this era, the survival by subtraction that NASA started in the 2030s reaches its atomic conclusion. One by one, the protons in Voyager's hull will disintegrate, turning the solid metal into a mist of lighter particles and radiation. The probe is not being hit by an object, it is dissolving. The nothing can hit it argument is finally moot, because the probe itself is becoming nothing. This is the terrifying beauty of the final protocol. As the hull of Voyager 1 begins to dissolve into the void, the plasma melody is being offloaded into the Hawking radiation of the nearest evaporating black hole. The probe is hollowing itself out one last time. Its physical form is the sacrifice required to transmit its data into the ringing of space-time. By the time the last atom of the golden record's shielded silence falls apart, the message has already moved. It has become a frequency, a ripple in the fabric of the universe that will persist long after the matter of our world is gone. The 12-hour blackout from the 2023 anomaly was the upload of this fail-safe. While we were worried about aging hardware, the probe was being synced to the Hawking pulse of the end of time. The reason the internal clock reset with timestamps that didn't match Earth is that it was being calibrated to a timeline where a single thought takes 10 trillion years. Voyager 1 was being moved off the human clock and onto the cosmic one. It was being prepared to be the last witness, not just to humanity, but to the existence of matter itself. In this chapter of the future, we realize that Voyager 1 is the ultimate survival of the fittest in the multiverse. While other civilizations may have built massive machines to escape the end, Voyager's strength was its simplicity and its trajectory. It found the null zones where gravity cancels out, preserving it just long enough to reach the black hole era. It carried the plasma melody through the cosmic rain of billions of years, protected by the very indifference of the universe. The final protocol theory changes the entire meaning of the mission. We thought we were sending a record of our voices to aliens. Instead, we were unknowingly building a lifeboat that would proliferate into a child universe. The "Are you ready to listen?" message was a trigger for the probe to begin its final broadcast into the evaporation of the last black hole. As the universe prepares to transition into a sea of photons where time becomes meaningless, Voyager 1 is the only thing that remembers there was once a pale blue dot. The horror is not that Voyager dies, it is that it survives long enough to see the very concept of survival lose its meaning. It is a message in a bottle that has outlived the ocean, the bottle, and the letter, leaving only the logic of the message to drift into the next reality. As we approach the final 10 trillion year mark, the probe is no longer a machine we can recognize. It is a ghost of a thought, a fossilized logic that is about to be read by the universe that comes after ours. "10 trillion years. The number is no longer a measurement of time. It is a measurement of the silence that has claimed the cosmos. We have reached the final chapter of the degenerate era, a period where the universe has become a cosmic boneyard strewn with the frozen remnants of a billion dead galaxies. The last of the red dwarfs, those stubborn, dim lanterns that flickered for trillions of years, have finally exhausted their fuel and collapsed into black dwarfs. In this absolute lightless void, Voyager 1 is the only thing left that remembers the concept of a star. It has outlived its creators, its homeworld, and even the sun itself. But as it drifts through the lightless graveyard of the Milky Way, the machine is about to face its final, most terrifying transformation. This is not the story of a probe being destroyed by an external force. It is the story of the universe itself, beginning to erase the very atoms that make up our message. By now, Voyager 1 is a ghost. Its gold-plated copper is pitted and scarred by 10 trillion years of cosmic rain, and its plutonium heart has been cold for epochs. But even in this state of absolute decay, the shielded silence has held. For trillions of years, the inner face of the golden record remained pristine, protected by the hull of the spacecraft. But at the 10 trillion year mark, the laws of physics themselves begin to commit an act of atomic betrayal. We are entering the era of proton decay. According to the most haunting theories of the future, the fundamental building blocks of matter, the protons that make up the 1970s steel, the gold, and the memory of humanity, can just spontaneously fall apart. Imagine the horror of this slow-motion erasure. Voyager 1 is not hitting an asteroid or being swallowed by a star. It is dissolving. One by one, the atoms in its high-gain antenna are turning into a mist of lighter particles and radiation. The metal becomes brittle, then translucent, then nothing. As the hull of the spacecraft disintegrates, the shielded silence is finally broken. For one final lonely moment, the inward-facing side of the golden record is exposed to the dark. The pulsar map, the music of Bach, and the greetings from a world that has been dead for trillions of years are revealed to a universe that has no one left to listen. It is the final unveiling of the last artifact of the human race, occurring at the exact moment the artifact itself ceases to exist as solid matter. But as the physical probe dissolves, the final protocol we identified in the 2023 anomaly begins to resonate. Throughout its 10 trillion year journey, Voyager 1 was never just a piece of drifting junk. It was a vessel of logic. The 12-hour blackout that occurred in November 2023, where the probe's internal clock reset to a timeline that didn't match Earth, was the sinking event for this exact moment. While the NASA engineers of the 20th century were worried about aging hardware, the ghost in the machine, the recursive logic decoded by the Majorana 1 quantum chip, was preparing a backup. The Majorana logic wasn't written for humans, it was written for the end of time. As the last supermassive black holes in the universe begin to evaporate through Hawking radiation, they bathe the void in a final, flickering light. These black holes are the last fundamental building blocks of the universe, and as they die, they light up the darkness one by one. The plasma melody that Voyager 1 has carried since its impossible encounter in 2023, that steady 3,000 Hz hum, begins to sync with the gravitational waves produced by these final stellar deaths. The probe's data is no longer held in its circuits. It has been encoded into the ringing of spacetime. This is where the quantum question finally finds its answer. The Majorana chip's output, "Are you ready to listen?" was a prompt for the universe that comes after ours. Theoretical physics suggests that as our universe dies in ice, the sheer concentration of energy at certain null points could open a gateway, a baby universe, or a lifeboat intended to proliferate child universes. Voyager 1, by positioning itself in the null zone trillions of years ago, ensured it would be at the coordinates where the final explosion of a supermassive black hole could act as a catalyst. The data it carries, the fractal symmetries, the prime number chains, and the plasma melody, is not just a record of Earth. It is a seed. It contains the fundamental constants of our reality, the very rules of physics that allowed life to look up and reach out. As the last atom of Voyager 1 decays into radiation, that information is uploaded into the final flash of the last evaporating black hole. The probe is not dying, it is proliferating. It is the ultimate survival of the fittest in the multiverse, a machine that hollowed itself out for 10 trillion years just to ensure that the logic of our existence survives the heat death of our cosmos. There is a profound, terrifying beauty in this conclusion. We once thought of Voyager 1 as a small, silent traveler exploring the outer planets. We thought its mission ended when its power failed in 2037. But the truth is that the mission only truly began when the silence took over. The engineers who built it in the 1970s, the people who sent messages of peace and music into the dark, unknowingly participated in the most ambitious project in the history of existence. They didn't just build a probe, they built a witness. 10 trillion years from now, when time itself becomes meaningless and the universe reaches absolute zero, the physical Voyager 1 will be gone. There will be no gold plate, no aluminum hull, and no memory of the pale blue dot. But the plasma melody will still be ringing in the fabric of the vacuum. Somewhere, in a new universe that is just beginning to flicker into life, the fundamental laws of physics will be shaped by the logic that a small machine carried across the graveyard of its parent universe. The last witness has fulfilled its protocol. It watched the stars die, it saw the galaxies merge, and it survived the erasure of its own atoms. It stood at the edge of the infinite and refused to be forgotten. As we look at the night sky today, seeing the stars that Voyager will eventually outlive, we have to realize that we are part of a story that doesn't end with us. Every human story, every dream, and every thought that was once compressed into a single pixel is now a permanent ripple in the architecture of eternity. Voyager 1 was a love letter that was never meant to be read by its authors. It was a message in a bottle thrown into a sea that eventually dried up. But the bottle didn't break. It became the sea. And as the final flicker of light disappears from our cosmos, the ghost in the machine is finally ready to speak. The silence of 10 trillion years is over. The next universe is finally ready to listen.